Breaking news, President Trump calling an audible canceling tomorrow's scheduled visit of the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles to the White House. President issuing a statement tonight saying, quote, "The Philadelphia Eagles are unable to come to the White House with their full team to be celebrated tomorrow. They disagree with their president because he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart, in honor of the great men and women of our military and the people of our country." So I want to bring in now Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. Congressman, thank you very much. You're originally from Philly?
I'm sorry?
Are you originally from Philadelphia?
I am born and raised in Philadelphia and live in Philadelphia at the moment. I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, our state capital, because I was here pushing legislation with my brother. And I'm also, most importantly, a lifelong Eagles fan.
Yeah, I just wanted to establish your connection to Philadelphia and the Eagles. So what's your reaction to the president abruptly canceling this scheduled visit tomorrow?
You know, besides the fact that I'm a Philadelphian and I'm an Eagles fan, it's just one more example of the way this president has changed the norms. Every previous president, Republican or Democrat, would welcome the team that won the championship, whether it's the Super Bowl or the World Series or the Stanley Cup. It would be a nice event. It's the president acting in his capacity as head of state, and that would be the end of it. I still remember President Reagan hosting the Redskins and throwing a football. That's the norm, and yet again, Donald Trump has found a way to divide people and to make it about himself instead of the championship team and their fans.
Yeah, and look, this is the first time that players don't want to go to the White House. There are players that have gone to a number of administrations, or gone against a number of administrations not going to the White House because they disagree with them politically. They didn't uninvite them or to the White House. They just continued and celebrated with the people who showed up. But here's what you tweeted. You said that you even make a championship team visiting the White House all about you. What is wrong with you? Seriously, what condition do you have? Why do you say that?
I think the president is a narcissist, and I'm not a psychologist. I understand that psychiatric professionals have a certain limitation on publicly diagnosing someone. But as a lay person who is not a psychiatrist, the fact that Donald Trump is seems to be such a deeply insecure human being, the fact that he makes everything about himself is really bizarre. And again, I mean, this is just, if this were the only example, that would be one thing. But this is one of, what are we now, hundreds of examples in the way in which Donald Trump has broken the norm and again made something that should be a nice thing and a way to bring people together, instead just an opportunity to make it about himself.
Well, this comes on the heels of the NFL ruling requiring players to stand during the national anthem or stay in the locker room. I mean, what do you want to say to the Eagles players tonight?
Well, one of them, at least Malcolm Jenkins, is a constituent of mine, and I saw on Election Day. I admire the fact that a number of the Eagles, such as Chris Long, have really made bold stands on social justice. At least one of the Eagle players actually played for free this entire year and donated their entire salary to charity. It's interesting about standing for the national anthem, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't recall any of the Eagle players taking a knee this year. So if the president's trying to make it about that, I don't think the Eagles are necessarily the best example, other than the fact that they've made strong stands as individuals for social justice causes.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to talk about that with the panel because our Jake Tapper spoke with a player and an NFL source who notes that not one of the players on the Super Bowl winning Eagles took a knee all regular season. So his statement doesn't add up. Thank you. I appreciate it, Congressman Boyle.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Yeah. I want to bring in now CNN political commentator and former Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania, also CNN political commentator Scott Jennings and Bakari Sellers. So, good evening. You heard the congressman there. And so I'll start with the congressman now. You're from Pennsylvania, Eagles fan. What do you think?
Well, Brendan Boyle's a good friend, and I think the president of the United States knew darn well when he invited the Eagles to the White House celebration that some would not attend. And so disinviting them at this late hour seems to me a bit contrived, a political stunt. I think it's very unfortunate. That said, I went to an Eagles game this year. I didn't see anybody take a knee. It's too bad that football's become so politicized. I happen to think that the players taking a knee was not the right thing to do, but they certainly had the right to do it. There are better ways to protest You know, you can stand in the shadow of William Penn at City Hall. That'd be a better way to hold a rally and talk about the issues that you are concerned about. I never thought doing this at the football games was very helpful to the NFL or the brand.
Yeah. So you think, Bakari, you think this is a strategy on the part of the president because he writes in his response that they wanted to send a delegation. He didn't think that was good enough and that the fans deserve better. And NFL Network reports that they were planning to send around 10 people to the White House ceremony. But you say he's doing it to divide the country.
Yeah, not only is he trying to divide the country, but he just canceled a party that no one was coming to anyway. That's what the president did. None of these players were coming. I mean, we talked about the fact that none of these players kneeled. Malcolm Jenkins actually raised a fist in protest. Chris Long actually donated his entire salary to charitable causes. But, you know, the president's thinking is not that different from Congressman Dent, and that's unfortunate. I think that people have made this issue out to be something different than what it is. Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, Malcolm Jenkins, all of these players who are very, very courageous are protesting police brutality and oppression in this country. They're not protesting the flag. They're not protesting our military. They're not protesting the national anthem. They're protesting injustices that happen to African Americans. The irony in saying that someone needs to find a better way to protest is simply like saying that the 4 kids February 1st, 1960 at the Woolworths counter shouldn't have set in. They should have found some other way to protest. Or maybe Dr. King and John Lewis shouldn't have marched across the bridge because they were blocking traffic. Maybe they should have stood under a statue. The problem that we're having is that people have misconstrued what this is about. Malcolm Jenkins, the Philadelphia Eagles are leaders in that. I'm proud of them. And any player that wants to take a knee, that can afford to take a knee, should take a knee because that's the only way we're going to get change in this country.
So listen, I want to let me ask you this, Scott, because I'm looking at over a list of players, not just from the NFL, but from different sports teams who have refused to go to the White House. It's not the first time. And they didn't cancel this ceremony. No other president canceled the ceremony. I mean, is there anything presidential about disinviting the Super Bowl champions from the White House because some of the players disagree with you?
Well, I think that this was not just a handful of players who were canceling. I think what the White House is upset about is that if the news media in Philadelphia is right tonight, fewer than 10 players were planning to attend. I mean, that's not just a couple of guys who were upset. That's a mass protest. That's an attempt to try to embarrass the president that they disagree with. And that's their right. I don't think anybody should be compelled to go to an event they don't want to go to, and I don't think the president ought to be compelled to have an event that he doesn't want to have if he feels like he's going to be embarrassed. What I find interesting about this whole ordeal is it's the first sort of Trump-NFL interaction since the NFL caved to the president and changed their rules about the national anthem. And at the time, we all thought this was Trump getting a victory over the NFL, but clearly he's still not happy with the NFL. It wasn't enough for him, and he's taking it a step further. I think largely because he thinks every time this is in the news, it's a political winner. He thinks the short-term pain of making people angry in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania is worth the long-term gain of this being a political winner for him every time it's in the news everywhere else in the country.
The first part of your statement, you said, or your answer, I should say, is you said that it's an attempt to deliberately embarrass the president. Because you disagree with someone politically, why is that an intentional embarrassing the president? Why is it then again about the president and not about them just disagreeing with him or that their issues are not being paid attention to?
Oh, I think they are perfectly well within their rights to not want to show up and to make a statement against the president they disagree with by not showing up. But on the same token, the president is well within his rights to not hold an event at which he feels like people are deliberately trying to embarrass him, which is clearly how he feels about this. Again, fewer than 10 players were planning to show up. This isn't a couple of guys who were mad. This is a mass protest, and the president didn't want to be embarrassed in his own backyard. So everybody's allowed to cancel this.
They were sending a delegation of 10.
His part, and the players canceled theirs.
They were sending a delegation of 10, and they're saying, they said that they had a couple of meetings to discuss the invitation. Not many players wanted to attend the White House ceremony. The numbers were low. But the president making an issue of the players who take a knee during the national anthem to protest racial injustice was never even mentioned in the meetings. The Eagles said there was no infighting on the team about attendance. They just didn't want to go. We'll continue. We'll be right back. President Trump slamming the door on the Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles, and he has canceled their scheduled visit tomorrow at the White House. Eagles issuing a statement just tonight. Here it is, a new statement saying, "It has been incredibly thrilling to celebrate our first Super Bowl championship. Watching the entire Eagles community come together has been an inspiration. We are truly grateful for all the support we have received, and we are looking forward to continuing our preparations for the 2018 season." Great statement. Back with me, former Congressman Charlie Dent, also Scott Jennings and Bakari Sellers. So Congressman Dent, I want to play this. This is a former Eagles player, Torrey Smith, said on my show back in February about not attending the White House ceremony. Here it is.
If I told you that I was invited to a party by an individual that I believe is sexist or has no respect for women, or I told you that this individual has said offensive things towards many minority groups, and I don't feel comfortable by it. This individual also called my peers and my friends SOBs. You would understand why I wouldn't want to go to that party. So why is it any different when this person has the title of President of the United States?
So the Eagles' response was certainly showed uniting. He had a very good point there, don't you think, Congressman?
Yeah, I do. I think Torrey Smith made a very fair point that he objects to many of the president's comments or behavior, and he felt that he didn't want to attend. And I respect that. I mean, he's very honest about it. He was very civil about it, and I have a lot of respect for the man. Yeah. I think it was a fair statement.
Bakari, ESPN's Jamel Hill tweeted this. She said, "So it's not new news. Several of the Eagles were participating in peaceful demonstrations during the national anthem and weren't interested in going to the White House. In other words, this was a political setup by Trump." So, political setup, Bakari?
Oh, no question about it. I mean, Trump does well when he's waging these culture wars. Culture wars are only successful when we're stupid enough to fall for them, though. You know, he sends these dog whistles out to his base. He sends these dog whistles out to various voters. I mean, what this is Trump bullying the NFL owners. The NFL owners look at these players as chattel. They tell them when to stand. They tell them when they can stand, when they can't stand, what they can stand for, where they can stand. And these players are simply saying, I have a platform. I want to utilize my voice. I want to speak out. I am no one's piece of chattel. I can raise my voice and express my First Amendment right like anyone else. And the fact is, this isn't the first team to do this. In fact, the Golden State Warriors said to hell with Donald Trump too, and they actually went to the National African American History Museum instead. And so you're starting to see players of color, players of conscience, even Chris Long, come together and raise their voices like Muhammad Ali did. And we all praise Muhammad Ali because they forget the revolutionary that he was.
Yeah, and in the moment, he wasn't necessarily celebrated, but then history has been very kind to him, and people see him for the hero that he was and is. So listen, this all comes, Scott, on the heels of the NFL seeming to appease the president by ruling that teams must stand during the national anthem or stay in the locker room. I mean, Trump, he got what he wanted, so why is he adding fire to this debate? Why is he adding more fuel to the fire?
Well, two reasons. One, I think he feels like he was being set up. I think that word was used earlier in this conversation. I think he feels like he was being set up to have an event in which he was going to be embarrassed at his own venue, and he wasn't willing to do that. And number two, I think he feels like that every time this is in the news, this whole issue of standing for the national anthem, that it's a political winner. What I fear for the president is that I actually believe he may be on the cusp of locking in some gains with the African American community based on his work on criminal justice reform, based on some of the people who've come around to seeing his point of view on certain issues, based on unemployment drops among African Americans. I fear these kinds of issues are roadblocks in making those inroads that he could be on the cusp of making otherwise. So we'll see if the president's right. He thinks it's a long-term political victory to continue to bring this up. I actually think that he may be stunting his growth with the African American community when he's been trying to lock in some gains by going back to the well one more time on this issue.
Look, unfortunately, I'm out of time, but if you saw Bakari's face, he does not agree with anything at all that you just
No.
said.
Kanye West.
I knew I was going to get the last word.
Yeah.
I wanted to contort Bakari's face.
I have to go, but listen, it would have been...
Fly, Eagles, fly. Fly, Eagles, fly, guys.
Absolutely.
Come on.
I'm a former Philadelphian, so I say Philadelphia. Yeah. So listen, all I have to say is I don't necessarily agree with this, but the players are certainly welcome to come to the White House and celebrate the American people and the military. But if they don't want to show up, that's their business. We'll have a great celebration anyways. That would be better than saying, you can't come because you weren't going to come anyways. You're uninvited.